Thanksgiving at my parents' house in Cleveland, Ohio, United States of America, always smelled like roasted turkey, butter, and old rugs that never quite lay flat. I wore a plain black dress and sat near the window, where the glass fogged each time I breathed. The table was set for the wedding, the kind my mother, Evelyn, saved for big days. The silver looked bright because she polished it in the morning, humming to herself. I watched the steam lift off the sweet potatoes and tried to think about the little things. The warm rolls, the salt shaker shaped like a tiny house, the way the ceiling light made a soft circle on the table. I held on to small details like they were handles I could grip. My brother Mark and our cousin James traded jokes across the table, knocking their elbows into the chairs. Laura, my younger sister, kept tapping her phone under the cloth napkin in her lap like no one could see. Aunt Nora wore a green sweater and kept asking if anyone wanted more cranberries. Ben, a friend from our old street who still came by for holidays, looked like he wanted to help but didn't know how. My mother glanced at me now and then with a careful smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Have you found a real job yet?" she asked in a low voice, as if the word real might get up and walk around the room. We ate, and the talk grew louder. I answered short and steady, the way I do when I solder a thin chain and don't want to shake. I said I was doing fine. I said work was steady. I said I was happy to be here. No one listened for long. The talk kept turning back to promotions, bonuses, who bought a bigger house, and who might move to New York. I cut my turkey into small bites and let the noise wash over me. I knew what I had built, but it lived in a quiet place in me, and I did not bring it out for this table. When the pumpkin pie came out and everyone settled with forks and coffee, my dad, Frank, stood with his glass. He grinned at the room, and then he looked straight at me with a bright, careless face. "Look at her. She's a failed girl," he said, like it was a punchline to a joke we were all in on. The room went still. I felt heat climb my face and stop in my ears. Mark laughed and then went silent. James looked away. Aunt Nora fussed with a napkin like it were a bird she could not calm. Ben stared down at his plate, his jaw tight. My mother said my name once, soft, as if finding it after misplacing it. I did not argue. I did not point to numbers or show proof. I set my fork down, folded my napkin, and stood. "Thank you for dinner," I said. My voice stayed level, which surprised me more than anything. I walked past the family photos on the wall, the ones where we were small and the sun made everyone squint. I walked past the chipped banister and the little ceramic geese my mother loved. I put on my coat by the door and felt the weight of my keys in my hand. Outside, the air was sharp and kind, like it knew what I needed. I walked to my car while the porch light threw a gold shape on the steps. The city felt clear at night. Streetlights made long lines on the wet road. I drove the familiar streets back to my small house on Maple Street, where the porch rail leans a little and the mailbox squeaks. Daisy, my brown and white rescue dog, met me at the door, tail beating like a drum. I turned on one lamp and let the warm circle of light fall across the living room. I made tea because the act of boiling water and waiting calms me. Then I moved the framed painting in the hallway, lifted it off its hook, and opened the small safe behind it. Inside were papers that mattered more than loud voices. Contracts from New York, purchase orders from Chicago, insurance on stones, and a fresh report that showed $3,800,000 in assets. A new line, signed just last week, showed a partner order from London in Europe for £520,000. I looked at the figures without hurry. They were facts, not fireworks. In the back room, my studio was set the way I liked it. A bench with grooves from long nights. A torch that clicked when it lit. Spools of silver wire. Little tins that held prongs and jump rings. On a tray, a neat line of sapphires and diamonds, each with a small tag I wrote by hand. I ran a soft cloth over them, like I was saying hello. The safe held more stones and a log that listed each one by weight and cut. I had learned to be careful. My inventory sat at a number that made sense for the work I had booked, about $240,000 in stones and settings, paid for in full, no loans, no noise. Numbers are not my heart, but they are my proof. I thought back to how I started. A rented garage in Detroit, a workbench I bought used for $300, and a box of tools I found in a shop that smelled like oil. I burned my fingers more times than I'd like to recall. I ruined my first dozen prong settings and wanted to quit. But I kept going because the work made me feel steady. I sold my first ring to a woman named Claire, who owned a small shop in Cleveland. Then a buyer in New York City took a chance on 5 pieces and sent a check for $2,500 that felt like a door opening. I saved every dollar, learned from every mistake, and built the business so slowly no one outside my circle could see it growing. I sat at the bench and breathed like I do when I need my hands to stay sure. The house was quiet. The heater hummed. Daisy curled under the table and sighed. My father's words still rang in my head, but they were only sound, not truth. I could feel the old pull to explain, to bring out the papers and say, "See." I let that feeling pass. I knew why I kept my life close. In my line of work, quiet is safety. Quiet is control. Quiet is focus. I chose it. I would keep choosing it. Before bed, I wrote a short note to myself and stuck it to the inside of the safe. Stay steady. Trust the work. I set the alarm for early. I put the painting back over the safe and checked the locks on the doors and windows, the way I always do. In the bathroom mirror, my face looked tired but clear. I washed off the day and felt the heat leave my cheeks. I climbed into bed with a book I didn't read and turned off the lamp. In the dark, I pictured the stones I would set tomorrow, a round diamond in a low basket for small sapphires in a straight line, a thin band in white gold with a hand-cut pattern. I thought of the orders waiting to be packed for New York and the email I needed to send to my contact in London about the £520,000 shipment plan. I thought of my small house, paid for with my own money, and the new life that kept growing in quiet rooms. I was not the failed girl from the loud table. I was the woman who left without a scene, came home to her work, and knew her worth. I fell asleep in my own house in America, steady and sure. Morning light slid across my porch like a quiet wave, and the boards gave their small winter creak as I stepped out. I walked to the corner cafe on Euclid Avenue, the one where the bell on the door rings too loud and the coffee tastes like a fresh start. Claire stood behind the counter with her hair tied back and a grin she couldn't hold in. "You've seen it, right?" she asked, already reaching for a newspaper. I shook my head. She spread the Cleveland Ledger on the counter between the muffins and the tip jar as if it were a map. There I was, right on the front. My name bold, my picture clear, me in that navy blazer I saved for buying days, hands open around a small velvet box. The headline ran like a drumbeat. Local designer closes $8 million deal with New York and London boutiques. I laughed once, a small sound I couldn't swallow. It wasn't a secret, but it wasn't loud either. I had built this jewelry business in steady steps, one clean setting at a time, one careful sale, one invoice that added up. Now it sat on a page for the whole city to see. The article told the story in easy lines. It said I started in a rented garage in Detroit and moved home to Cleveland when the orders picked up. It was named Vera, the buyer in New York City who took a chance on 5 rings that first spring. It described the London shop in Europe that had just placed a new order for spring delivery, a contract for £1,100,000 signed and insured. It called my brand Olivia Stone and said current inventory and signed contracts brought total assets to just over $10 million. It mentioned my small Maple Street house, the one with the leaning rail, and it even named Daisy, the rescue dog who watches me work. People in line stood a little taller to read over my shoulder, and the bell kept crashing each time someone came in. Claire slid me a cup on the house and tapped the photo with her nail. "You look fierce," she said, and I shook my head, smiling because it felt safer than tears. My phone began to buzz on the counter like a trapped bee. Calls, texts, unknown numbers, a voicemail from Vera, full of joy, a message from Henry in London, warm and brisk, confirming the £220,000 deposit that landed overnight. I turned the screen face down and tucked it under my palm. I left a $5 tip and took my coffee into the clear air of the United States of America morning. The city felt new. I walked slowly past brick fronts and winter trees, past a bakery where a boy pressed his nose to the glass, past a shop window that held a dress I could afford but didn't need. My father's words from last night drifted up like smoke. Look at her. She's a failed girl, and then blew away in the wind. A headline is not a shield, but it is proof. The work was the proof first. The headline only named what I already knew. I took the long way home because I was not hiding. I was making room inside myself for what had changed and what had not. Daisy met me at the door, thumping her tail against the wall. I locked the deadbolt and set my coffee on the table. I moved the painting, opened the small safe, and took out a folder. Inside were the pages the article hinted at but didn't show. Insurance binders for shipment to New York valued at $480,000. The London schedule with 3 tranches totaling £1,100,000, and the balance sheet that pegged our cash at $1,260,000 after last week's payments. Numbers are not my heart, but they calm my hands. I set a black velvet tray on the kitchen table and placed a diamond cluster in the center, 8 stones tight as a star. I called the team. Maya picked up first, voice bright. She wanted to know if we should move the April run forward. Not yet, I said. Quality first. Ship early only if it's perfect. Victor, who manages shipping, had already checked our courier hold for New York. The crates would be sealed by noon and insured to $500,000 even, because I prefer round numbers when I talk to carriers. Claire, different Claire than the one at the cafe, my showroom manager, texted that 2 clients from Chicago had called for private viewings next week, both ready to place orders above $50,000. I wrote it all down in a plain notebook with lines, the way I always do, so the day stays simple. By late morning, the article had walked ahead of me. Ben, who helps with security and kindness, knocked to say the front camera feed had lit up with delivery people and curious drivers who slowed at the curb. He tightened a latch on the side gate and set the alarm to chime each time a door opened. We talked in the kitchen about a small move I had been planning anyway, into a larger house with a studio over the garage, still in America, with room for another bench. Soon, I said, but not because of a headline, because of the work. Ben nodded and smiled like he always does when I choose the steady answer. I ate a sandwich over the sink and thought about pricing for the new line. Gold was up last week, even for us, so I recalculated a thin band and brought it from $1,200 to $1,280 to keep the margin honest. I wrote to Ruth, my accountant, and asked her to confirm the quarter's taxes and the withholding for the team. I like clean books more than any sparkle. Then I drafted a short note to Vera, thanking her for the years of faith, and attached the photo of the cuff she loved. I kept it to 3 sentences. Busy people read short notes. In the afternoon, I walked Daisy around the block. Mrs. Parker from 2 doors down waved me over, her scarf striped and cheerful. Saw you in the paper, she said. Knew you were up to something good in that house. Mr. Allen, who runs the hardware store, leaned on his shovel and said he always liked how I paid my bills on the same day each month. The compliments felt like warm hands, but I kept my feet on the ground. A headline fades. A habit stays. I said thank you and went back to my bench. The studio smelled like metal and lemon oil. I set a round diamond in a low basket and tested each prong with a soft push. I laid 4 small sapphires in a straight line and checked the seat with a loop. I polished a thin white gold band until it shone like a new idea. While the wheel spun, I printed the article and slid it into a clear sleeve for my files, not for my walls. I don't need to look at it each day. I need to make the next piece right and ship on time. As evening settled, the phone started again. Relatives, numbers I knew, numbers I did not. I let them go to voicemail. I fed Daisy, set the alarm, and closed the safe. I thought about America and Europe, the long water between them, and the quiet thread my work runs across it. The bell at the cafe would still be too loud tomorrow. The porch boards would still creak. The workbench would still be waiting. I was not hiding. I was working. And now the city knew my name. By noon, the doorbell rang like it had a grudge, a hard metal buzz that cut through the hum of my heater and the soft click of my torch cooling on the bench. I wiped my hands, smoothed my hair, and walked down the short hall. Through the glass, I saw my parents on the porch, Frank with his jaw clamped, Evelyn with her lipstick a little too bright for winter. Mark and Laura stood lower on the steps, clinging to the railing like they were bracing for wind. When I opened the door, cold air pushed in with them. "What is going on?" my mother asked before her coat was off. "Why didn't you tell us?" my father said, sharp and scared. "Is this true? Is that paper real?" I stepped aside and let them in. Daisy trotted up, tail tapping the doorway like a metronome. I told her it was okay, and she curled by the radiator. We sat at the kitchen table that looks out on the small yard, the one with the lilac bush that won't bloom until May. I offered coffee because it felt like the proper move when a storm walks into a house. They said yes, all four at once, and I poured into my sturdy mugs. The steam rose like a calm answer I didn't have yet. My mother twisted the ring on her finger. My father stared at the fridge like it held a clue. "You were at Thanksgiving last night," he said. "You sat there like everything was the same." "It was not the place," I said. I kept my voice even. I did not add, "It was not safe." I stood, slid the framed painting in the hall aside, and turned the small dial on the safe. The door opened with a soft seal-broken sound. I brought the folder to the table and laid it flat as a map. There were bank letters with Cleveland letterheads and insurance certificates for shipments to New York and a contract stamped in London. Europe clear on the page, with the neat number £1,400,000 printed in a line that still made my chest lift. I set down the latest summary, cash and inventory, and signed orders totaled just over $12,300,000. I did not put a finger on any amount. I let the numbers sit there like chairs. "I am not poor," I said. I never was poor. I was quiet. I told them how I learned stones by weight and light, how I saved every spare dollar when I lived in Detroit and rented a garage for $300 a month, how I moved back to Cleveland when orders from New York began to stack. I said Maya sets our prongs with a steady hand. Victor runs shipping like a train schedule, and Claire manages the showroom on East 9th with a smile that calms even the nervous buyers. I said we price fair and pay fair. I said taxes go out on time because I like clean books more than any sparkle. I did not say I did it all to be loved. I said I did it because it was right and it was mine. For a long minute, no one spoke. The house ticked, the heater breathed, and Daisy let out a small dog sigh. Then my father stood, praise flooding his face like he had found a new song and wanted to sing it fast. "This is incredible," he said, too loudly. "I always knew you were smart. I bragged about you, you know I did." My mother reached for my hand and called me dear the way she had when I was little and scraped my knee on the sidewalk. Mark asked if the newspaper planned to follow up. Laura asked if I would be moving to New York now that I had made it. They were trying to build a fresh stage right over last night's floor. I took my hand back and folded it with the other. I looked at each of them, so there could be no mistake. "I'm going to be plain," I said. "Your words at the house were cruel. You laughed. You called me a failed girl. Today you see money and want a new story. I won't give it to you." I could feel my voice settle into a clear place. "We have no relationship now. I don't know you. I don't want to see you. Please leave my house." The word house mattered to me as I said it. This was my house in America, bought with my work, protected by my rules. Evelyn's face folded. She began to cry in small, careful sobs, the kind that ask for someone to move closer. Frank's mouth opened and shut, anger and shame fighting for a seat. Mark stared at the table like the wood grain could explain me. Laura's eyes shone, but she said nothing. My father tried again, softer. "We were scared for you," he said. "We wanted you safe. We didn't understand." He offered a wild half-joke about a loan he never gave, about a bigger house we could buy together, about taking the family to New York for celebration dinner and spending $2,000 just to toast. My mother touched the contract, then pulled her hand back as if the number burned. "I hear you," I said, "but I am not a stage for your fear or your pride. I am a woman who built a business. I did it without you. I keep my books clean and my circle small. I will not let you rewrite me because a headline made you nervous." I stood. My chair made a short wooden sound. Please gather your coats. I opened the front closet and took out their wool and puff sleeves and held them like simple things. Fabric, buttons, nothing more. They stood one by one. My mother tried to hug me. I stepped back and shook my head. No, I said, and it was the first time that little word felt like a house key in my hand. My father nodded once, a stiff hinge. Mark kissed Daisy on the head and whispered that he was sorry. Laura tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and said she wished things were different. So do I said. But they are not. I opened the door. Bright cold poured in, as if the day had been waiting. They stepped onto the porch, Frank first, then Evelyn, then Mark and Laura, and walked down the stairs to the sidewalk where the city kept on going, the way cities do. I watched them cross the small patch of lawn, then I closed the door and locked it. The lock slid home with a clear, final sound that did not hurt. I leaned my back against the wood and felt the quiet rise again in my chest. I did not shake. I did not break. I put the papers back in the safe, shut the door, and lifted the painting into place. Daisy got a treat for being a good guard. She took it gently and wagged like a flag. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Ben saying the front camera had caught the cluster on the porch, that he had smoothed a nosy neighbor and reset the alert. A note from Vera in New York came in, 3 words and a heart. Proud of you. An email from Henry in London confirmed the next £220,000 tranche would clear by Friday. I answered each one in 2 lines, then turned back to the bench. The studio smelled like lemon oil and warm metal. I set a round diamond in a low basket and tested each prong with a soft push. I laid 4 small sapphires in a straight line and checked the seat with my loupe. I polished a thin white gold band until it shone like a promise I could keep. The world outside my window moved on, cars, people, news, and I stayed with the work that had built my life. I was not the failed girl from the loud table. I was the woman who drew a clean line in her own house in America and then went back to her bench, steady as ever. I moved 2 months later. I bought a brick house with a wide porch in Columbus, still in America, with a workshop built over the garage and a small garden lined with white stones. The deed was simple and clean. I wired $920,000 for the property and $80,000 for the build-out of the studio. I paid in full. No calls. No begging. Just wires and keys. Daisy trotted from room to room like a happy inspector and then curled on the sunny patch by the back door. The porch looked out on a quiet street with tall maples. I stood there with the keys in my hand and felt the ground settle under my feet. Setting up the studio felt like putting my mind in order. The benches faced a row of high windows, so light fell straight onto the work. I had a proper ventilation hood, new torches, and 3 polishing wheels that hummed instead of screamed. Maya took the first bench because she earned it years ago. Lily and Anna, our new setters, took the next 2. Victor measured shelves for shipping crates and laughed when I asked for 1 more label printer, just in case. Claire arranged trays for the showroom visits and drew up a calendar that did not leave us breathless. We made small changes that felt big. Victor set up a second route to New York, so orders reached the 5th Avenue boutique in 48 hours. We kept our insurance neat and round, $500,000 per crate, so no one had to squint at a form. Ben, steady as always, walked the new house with a contractor he trusts and added cameras, better locks, and a simple alarm chime that sings each time a door opens. He smiles more than he talks, but when he says, "You're covered," I believe him. The studio began to sound like a song we knew. Saw, torch, polish, pack, repeat. I kept my promises to myself. 10% of profits went to shelters for women in America. The first wire from the new house was $75,000 to a shelter in Columbus that runs a safe house with quiet rooms and bright kitchens. I sent another donation to Cleveland because that city raised me even when the house did not. We funded a bench in a city park there, not for my parents, but for the girl I was when I sat and tried to breathe. The plaque is plain, for the girl who kept going. It is enough. It does not need my name. I wrote thank you notes the way I build a ring. Clean and short. I sent Vera in New York City a gold pendant shaped like a small door, for the first open door she gave me. I mailed a twin in silver to our buyer in London, in Europe, for balance. Henry wrote back from London with a line that made me laugh. Silver for fog, gold for sun. He confirmed the next £220,000 tranche and a spring trunk show that would run 2 days longer than planned. I pinned the dates on the wall and kept my head down. Pride is loud. Work is quiet. There were more headlines. A museum in Chicago bought a diamond cuff for $250,000 and put it in a glass case with the lighting just right. A client in Boston wore my pieces at a gala and sent a thank you note with a photo that made me grin at my workbench. A magazine in New York called to ask about the woman behind the numbers, and I said the same thing I always say. We price fair, we pay fair, and we ship on time. I printed the article and slid it into a clear sleeve for my files, not my walls. I do not need to look at it each day. I need to make the next piece right. My family tried to circle back, as I knew they would. A long card arrived in my mailbox with thick paper and crowded words. I read it once and put it away. Laura called and left a message that said she missed me. I missed the idea of us, but I did not miss the table or the joke. I wrote one letter, careful and plain. I said I wished them health and peace. I said I would not see them. I did not explain the past or defend the line. A boundary is not a speech. It is a door that stays closed. The days found a good rhythm. I walked Daisy at dawn and waved to Mrs. Green across the street when she watered her porch plants with a mug. I brewed coffee and opened the ledger. Ruth, my accountant, sent the quarter's taxes with a neat note, and I wired the amount without a flinch. Claire ran the Cleveland showroom like a calm lake and sent me a list of private viewings in New York and Chicago. Victor packed the crates and texted the tracking numbers like clockwork. Maya trained Lily and Anna on tiny prongs until their hands learned the slow patience our work needs. Ben checked the cameras and reminded me to eat. We also built for the future in ways that do not flash. I set aside $30,000 for a small training fund so we could teach young women in America who want to trade and a steady wage. We started with 2 local apprentices, Nora and Elise, who came in after school and learned to polish with a light touch. The website grew cleaner and faster. Orders clicked in from New York, Boston, and Denver. Henry's shop in London sent a photo of a window dressed only with our pieces and a single card that said Olivia Stone. I smiled at the ocean between America and Europe and thought about how thin a line can carry a strong message. At night, I sat on my wide porch with tea and Daisy at my feet, and I looked at the sky the way I always do when I want to remember scale. America here, Europe there, ocean in between, and no need to cross it to know my worth. The map in my head used to be crowded with routes I felt I had to travel to prove something. Now the map is simpler. My life is small where it should be small, and wide where it should be wide. Money comes in and goes out. The ledgers make sense. The team is safe and paid. The pieces shine because our hands are sure. I am not the failed girl from the old house. I am the woman who left quietly, who woke to a headline, who drew a clean line, and who built a better home. I keep my promises. I keep my books. I keep my name. From this porch in Columbus, in America, I tell the truth in plain words, then I go back to the bench and do the work that carries my life.